When you look at me, what do you see? Now, I'm going to go through some of the things that I typically hear. To the very astute, I usually get I'm black, I'm bearded, and I'm strong. I also get I look like NBA superstar James Harden. I'm most definitely the poorer version. I get hip-hop superstar, Emmy Award winner, Donald Glover, a.k.a. Childish Gambino. Yeah, that too, right? And last but not least, I get Curtis Jackson, a.k.a. 50 Cent. Now, one of my goals is definitely to get rich or die trying. I think Sally Mae is putting the emphasis on or die trying, right? But see, what I don't hear is, Phil, you look like somebody that lives with depression and anxiety. Phil, you look like somebody that was suicidal for 15 years, every day, 5 to 6 times a day. They don't say, Phil, you look like somebody that was driving on Interstate 95, wanting to crash your car to end your life. No. Because see, here in America, when we think about mental health, we think about the homeless man who's walking the streets, talking nonsensically to himself. We think about the white celebrity who takes their life via suicide. We think about the white mass murderer who goes into a high school and takes the lives of innocent children. Or it's usually your president who loves to tweet venom from the hip. But see, rarely does the conversation speak of a father of 2 kids, someone who possesses a master's in exercise science, a master's in social work, somebody pursuing a doctorate. Rarely is it a person of color. Rarely is it a black man like myself, until now, because black mental health matters. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is black mental health, and why is it differentiated amongst racial and ethnic lines? Black mental health are the individual and collective experiences that influence the wellness of a community. Trauma is the biggest influencer of black mental health. We're talking about historical trauma, slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, the Tuskegee experiment, up until present-day trauma, when you see somebody that looks like you get killed in their home. Rest in peace, Botham Jean. When you see somebody who's living with mental wellness issues get killed by the police. Rest in peace, Laquan McDonald of Chicago, Illinois. Or when you see somebody that looks like you get killed by somebody that looks like you. Rest in peace, XXX Tentacion. See, when we talk about trauma, trauma is unique to the individual, and I'm no different. There were 3 impactful traumatic situations that I've experienced in my life outside of the genetic predisposition because my grandmother lived with schizophrenia. I hearken back to being in 8th grade, 13 years of age. On the way to school, my mother has a nervous breakdown. She's crying. She's pulling at her clothes and her hair. She's cursing. I felt helpless because I couldn't help her, or I couldn't help myself. And see, I was expected to continue to go into school that day and achieve. It's funny, when I first started telling this story, I told my mother, listen, I'm telling the story of when you had a nervous breakdown. And she said, Phil, that didn't happen. Now, I know I'm getting older. I have a few grays, right? But I swear I remember that. And then she called me a week later and she said, Phil, I didn't know you remembered that. As if I wouldn't remember the most traumatic situation that I've experienced in my life. And that typically happens. We're often expected to just continue on because we are so resilient as a people. Because we do survive, and we've survived for hundreds of years. And I was expected to survive and go into school that day and perform. And I did. Because like many of us, I learned how to suppress my emotions and my feelings. But what if I didn't? What if I went into school and I started arguing with peers and fighting? What if I started arguing with the teachers? What if I did criminalistic behaviors within the community? Would I be deemed incorrigible and unable to be in the school setting, in the community setting? Or would anybody care that I just experienced this traumatic situation that has impacted me? Fast forward to my 12th grade year, 17 years of age, January 2001. My mother said, "Phil, come downstairs." She said, "Phil, your brother Bobby died." And I started crying. That was probably the only healthy coping skill that I had at the time, right? Because being a product of the hip-hop culture, hip-hop tells me when somebody dies, you either go out and get some liquor or you go get a rest in peace tattoo. Well, I wasn't old enough to drink. That would happen once I got to college, right? But I went out and I got this rest in peace tattoo. As if that was going to do something, if that was going to take away the pain of losing a primary relationship. It didn't. And people ask me, "Phil, well, how did your brother die?" Say, the opioid epidemic is popular now. But in the black community, in the hip-hop community, especially amongst black male, it's always existed. He was one who liked to use codeine and Xanax. I don't know what he was trying to cope with. I will never know. I went to school that Monday because I didn't have anybody to say, "Phil, stay home," because my mother was going through it because she just lost her only child. And I went to school feeling all of this emotion. And I remember it like yesterday. I was sitting in computer class. Miss Williams, my computer teacher, came up to me, and I don't know what she said. She said, "Phil," she could have said, "Phil, what was the score of the Eagles game last night?" I let her have it. I blacked on her. I cursed her out. Why? Because I had all this built up anger, all this built up rage. Because, see, when we're talking about depression and anxiety for black men especially, it doesn't look like somebody laying in bed for 6 and 7 days on end. No, it manifests itself through anger and rage. I ended up getting suspended that day. And Ms. Williams and I were able to laugh at the situation years later because I was able to cope with it and understand what I was feeling. But again, it was a moment in time that impacted my life. My third and final story happened at Bloomsburg University in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. Again, we remember traumatic situations, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I call it the Jew story, right? Because when I go fill out job applications and it says, "Have you ever been convicted of a crime?" As long as it doesn't say misdemeanor or felony, I can ignore it if it says that. But if it says, "Have you ever been convicted of a crime?" I have to check it off. And then I put, "Well, it all started with a cup of juice." And then the employers, they laugh like, "Oh, man." And I laugh like, "Ha, ha, ha. That's my life." So the Jew story is, I was coming from the gym to go get me something to eat. I got my food. I paid for it, emphasis on pay. And you know how you go to McDonald's, they give you a cup, and you can go to the fountain and get whatever drink you want. And I did that, and I tasted it to see if it was watered down. But see, when you go to a predominantly white institution like Bloomsburg University, it seems like they have all the minorities' names on a list. And the school police officer said, "Phil, that's stealing." Mind blown. And me having this anger, this frustration that's built up over years of trauma, and me not being able to express myself in a healthy way, I blacked on her just like I did Miss Williams. Unbeknownst to me, that would lead to 20-plus charges. I ended up going to jail that night. I ended up getting expelled from school. I ended up doing a weekend in jail because, listen, they say you'll get judged by a jury of your peers. With the average age in that community being 60 and over, it wasn't going to be a jury of my peers. But I needed that experience. I needed it. And I needed it because it told me that, Phil, I have to do something different. I ended up appealing to get back into Bloomsburg University, and people knew me, so people wanted me back. And so I got back, and I was focused. One day, my psychology professor, Dr. Cambone Camara, God bless the dead, he said, "Phil, come talk to me about anything, anytime." And I took him up on that. I went and talked to him, not to talk about school. I went to talk to him about a young lady I had been courting, right? And I wanted to understand, why didn't she want me? So I went to his office. I'm like, listen, I bought her sneakers. I took her to the movies. I took her to dinner. Well, my mom took her to dinner and all those things because I didn't have a job. Thanks, Mom. But he said to me, Phil, in life, you change to get something or to keep something. And I'm like, man, what are you talking about? Little did I know that that would become my mantra, that I realized I had to change. I had to work on my wellness so I can be whole. It took approximately 10 years, because that's the average length of time that they say somebody who lives with mental wellness issues, that's the time that it takes for them to come to grips with it and to seek treatment. For black people, I think it's much longer. And so within those 10 years, I've been on medication, which quelled the suicidal ideations. They're no more. I go to therapy every week. Hi, Dr. Val. It's been so critical for me in my wellness because I decided to go from living to thriving. To my black brothers and sisters, you too deserve to go from living to thriving. We no longer have to wear the mask. We're survivors. There's help now. We can get help and walk out there with our heads held high and get the treatment that we need so we can go from living to thriving. To my non-black brothers and sisters, will you now view the black person that you come in contact with and might be in a negative way and recognize that, you know what, they might have gone through something? Or to see them when they excel, what they had to go through to get to that point? Or will mental health continue to be viewed in America as Kate Spade, as Anthony Bourdain, as Chester Bennington, as Robin Williams? Would it now include actors Sam Sarpong, Lee Thompson Young? Will it now include 10-year-old Ashanti Davis, who took her life because of bullying? Will it now represent Emmanuel Sloan, who's the reason why I'm here? Because at 19 years of age, he decided to take his life by jumping in front of a train. This isn't an indictment on you or on America. This is just a public service announcement that's stating that we're here and we deserve to live and to thrive. Thank you.